Welcome, and we have another nature mystery today. Of course, my name's Jake. Now, the rock, actually the large boulder that I'm sitting on here, it's a mystery in itself. Now, the reason it's a mystery, before the land around us was a forest, it was agricultural land, it was a farm. There was crops being grown here. So the question I have is, how did this rock, or how did this boulder get here? Did farmers place it here? Or did something more natural place this rock here many, many years before that? We're going to find out next. All right, everybody. So to help us solve this nature mystery, we have Adrian Castro with us. Adrian, what makes you the perfect person to help us solve this mystery?
Oh, I don't know if I'm the perfect person, but I'm a geologist with a background in tectonics and geochemistry, and as part of my training, I learned about the glacial history of New England, as well as sort of the greater country and world. So I've got a
Okay.
little bit of background on this.
All right, that's good to know. So you've already kind of hinted at what this mystery might be. So, I mean, you watched the video, and so what did you
Yeah.
see? What do you think?
Sure. Well, so I think you had some good hypotheses about how that big boulder got on the Manus campus. And, the idea that it might have been moved for agriculture is a good one. Farmers would sometimes or often use rock walls to mark the boundaries of the properties. Or some of those walls still exist on the Manus property and the Savoy State Forest, like on the hike up the Spruce Hill, you see one of those, right? But those are usually pretty small, the bricks that constitute those walls or the boulders. And the rock that you were sitting on is much heavier, much bigger, not really easily moved. Doesn't make a lot of sense to use that to build a wall.
Exactly.
And if you look closely, you'd actually see that the rock that you're sitting on is of a very different type and chemistry to everything else that you find naturally in the area, or maybe naturally is not the right word, but in the area. So the question is, what natural phenomenon could have the power to move a boulder that big, potentially a really long distance, to put it near stuff that's not the same as it is? And the answer to that is glaciers.
Okay.
We talked about earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, the boulder that you were sitting on is actually something called, go for it.
So then how, I mean, when most people think of glaciers, they just think of massive sheets of rock, or sheets of ice, actually.
Yeah.
But they don't often think of everything else that could get stuck in those sheets of ice. So explain how that happened. Like how did, if there was a glacier on this property up in Massachusetts at one point, why, like, how did that cause the massive rock to get here?
Sure. So glaciers, and particularly the glaciers that covered New England, the greatest extent of glaciers from the North Pole to New England occurred about 20 to 30,000 years ago, sort of what we call the last glacial maximum. That was at the end of a period from about 2 million years ago, and we call the Pleistocene epoch, where glaciation first started. So these glaciers start at the North Pole. They're up to 10,000 feet deep, and as they move across the land, they break it apart. If they hit mountains, they'll break up those mountains. They'll grab things from underneath them, break them up into boulders, and sort of incorporate them into the ice or on top of the ice. And then the glacier moves, it grows. And in this case, these glaciers grew all the way to about Long Island, or Illinois, if you want to keep going west. And then when the glacier starts to melt, starts to recede, in this case, that was about 15 to 18,000 years ago. When the glacier melts, the rocks don't go with it. The rocks get dropped where they are. So these rocks are moved, hundreds, thousands of miles from where they originally were to wherever the glacier melts. And that type of rock is called a glacial erratic.
Wow, that's awesome. Turns out you were the perfect person to help us solve this. I'm glad you're able to come on today and help us figure this out.
Anytime.
I really appreciate it. And that's all I got for you today, Adrian. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate your time.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks for having me.